My father looked at my brother and said, I was not worth a single penny. He spoke as if I were a bad debt to be written off, leaving me shivering in the driveway with nothing but a dying phone. He thought he had buried me that winter night. He had no idea that hours later, in a hospital waiting room, I would uncover a secret that would force him to his knees. My name is Bella Brooks, and I am 34 years old. If you had asked me a week ago to define who I was, I would have handed you a business card from Wexler and Raines Risk Bureau with a confident smile. I would have told you about my credit score, which hovered near 800, or the mortgage pre-approval letter sitting on my kitchen counter. I would have told you I was a wife, a professional, a woman who understood how to mitigate disaster because that was literally my job. But disaster is not something you can always manage with a spreadsheet. Sometimes, disaster is a tidal wave that hits you while you are standing on dry land, convinced the ocean is miles away. Yesterday, at 10 in the morning, I sat in a sterile room with fluorescent lights humming overhead and signed the final papers dissolving my marriage to Evan Holt. He did not look at me. He was too busy checking his phone, probably texting the 20-year-old barista he had sworn was just a friend until I found the credit card receipts for hotel rooms in the city. The judge hammered a gavel, and just like that, I was single. I walked out of the courthouse with half of a savings account that had already been drained by legal fees and a hollow feeling in my chest that felt like hunger but was actually panic. By 2 in the afternoon, I was called into the Human Resources office at Wexler and Raines. They did not offer me water. They did not ask me to sit. The director, a woman whose name I could never remember, but whose perfume always smelled like burnt sugar, slid a single sheet of paper across the mahogany desk. She told me my position was being terminated effective immediately, due to a level 3 security breach linked to my login credentials. I tried to argue. I told them I was meticulous. I told them I followed every protocol. I told them that a breach was impossible because I double authenticated every single entry I made. She did not listen. She just pointed to the security guard standing by the door. I was escorted out with a cardboard box containing a succulent plant, a stapler, and a framed photo of a dog that Evan had kept in the divorce. I stood on the sidewalk in the middle of the afternoon rush, the noise of the city washing over me. Taxis honked, people shouted into their phones, and the smell of exhaust mixed with the damp chill of late winter. I had no job. I had no husband. My apartment lease was up in 3 days, and without proof of income, no landlord in this city would look at me twice. The average rent for a studio apartment was $2,400 a month. Health insurance under COBRA would cost me another $600. I did the math in my head, the numbers scrolling like a ticker tape of doom. I had enough cash to last maybe 3 weeks if I stopped eating. I did the only thing I could think of. I got into my 7-year-old sedan, which needed new brake pads and an oil change, and I drove west. I drove towards Cedar Hollow, Pennsylvania. Cedar Hollow is one of those suburbs that prides itself on manicured lawns and silent judgments. It is the kind of place where people smile at you in the grocery store, but close their blinds the second a car they do not recognize drives down the street. I grew up there. I spent 18 years trying to get out, and now, here I was, crawling back like a wounded animal seeking a cave. My father, Arthur Brooks, still lived in the house I grew up in. It was a large, imposing colonial with white pillars and a driveway that was always shoveled before the snow stopped falling. My brother, Tyler, lived in the guest cottage out back, supposedly saving money while he built his tech consulting career, though I suspected he just enjoyed the free rent and the meals our mother used to cook before she passed away. I pulled into the driveway at 8 in the evening. It was dark, and a mix of rain and sleet was coming down hard, turning the world into a gray slurry. My hands were shaking as I turned off the ignition. I sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, rehearsing what I would say. Dad, I hit a rough patch. Just a few days. I just need a place to sleep until I figure out my next move. I knew he would be disappointed. Arthur Brooks did not believe in failure. He believed in bootstraps and compound interest and looking the part. But surely, I thought, blood was thicker than a firing letter. Surely, the fact that I was his daughter would count for something. I got out of the car. The wind cut through my thin coat, biting at my skin. I did not have an umbrella. I walked up the path, the sleet stinging my face, and saw that the porch light was on. The front door opened before I could knock. My father stood there. He was wearing his gray cardigan, the one he wore when he wanted to look like a benevolent patriarch. He held a tumbler of scotch in one hand. Tyler stood behind him, leaning against the doorframe, looking bored. Tyler was 2 years younger than me, but he had always acted older, sharper, colder. Father. I started, my voice cracking. He did not let me finish. He did not step aside to let me in out of the cold. He stepped out onto the porch, closing the door slightly behind him to keep the heat inside. I heard you lost the job, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of surprise. I froze. How could he know it had happened 6 hours ago? News travels? Bella? Tyler said, his voice smooth. Risk management is a small world. You really screwed up this time. It was a mistake, I said, the desperation rising in my throat. I was framed. I did not do it. And Evan. We know about Evan. My father cut in. We know everything. You cannot hold on to a husband. You cannot hold on to a career. You come here expecting what a handout. I just need a place to sleep. Dad, please. It is freezing. My father looked at me. He looked at my wet hair plastered to my skull, at the cardboard box I had foolishly carried with me because I was afraid to leave my laptop in the car. He looked at me, and I saw something vanish in his eyes. It was not love. I do not think I had seen love there in a long time. It was utility. He was calculating my value, and the equation came up negative. He turned his head slightly to look at Tyler. Your sister is not worth a penny, he said. She is done. The words hit me harder than the freezing rain. He did not say it with anger. He said it with the casual dismissal of a man throwing away a broken toaster. She is done. Past tense. Finished. Tyler did not flinch. He did not defend me. He looked at me with eyes that were terrifyingly calm. It was a look of calculation. He nodded. Once. Go home. Bella. Tyler said. I have no home. I screamed, the sound tearing out of my throat. Then figure it out. My father said, You are 34 years old. Stop being a burden. He stepped back inside. Tyler followed. The heavy oak door slammed shut, and I heard the distinct click of the deadbolt sliding into place. I stood there for a full minute. The motion sensor light on the porch timed out and clicked off, plunging me into darkness. The sleet turned to heavy snow, coating my shoulders in white. I was shivering so violently my teeth clattered together. But the cold inside me was deeper. It was the absolute zero of realization. They had not just rejected me, they had discarded me. I walked back to my car. My boots sank into the mud at the edge of the driveway, the cold slime seeping into my socks. I threw the cardboard box into the passenger seat. The succulent had tipped over, spilling dirt all over the upholstery. I did not care. I drove until the house was a speck in the rearview mirror, and then I drove until I could not see the neighborhood at all. I ended up in the parking lot of a 24-hour supermart about 10 miles away. It was a vast ocean of asphalt under harsh sodium lights. I parked in the far corner, between a rusty pickup truck and a dumpster that smelled of rotting vegetables. I turned the engine off to save gas, but the temperature dropped rapidly inside the cabin. 5 minutes later, I turned it back on, off, on, a rhythm of survival. I curled up in the driver's seat, pulling my coat tight around me. It was impossible to get comfortable. The gear shift dug into my hip. The steering wheel blocked my knees. Every time a car drove past, my heart hammered against my ribs. I saw blue lights flashing on the main road, a police cruiser. I slouched down, terrified they would knock on the window and tell me to move. Loitering, vagrancy. Words I had only ever applied to other people were now hanging over my head. I checked my bank account on my phone. The screen was cracked near the bottom. $312. That was it. That was the sum total of my life. I did not sleep. I drifted in and out of a shallow, terrifying doze, waking up every time the wind shook the car. I realized then that homelessness does not start with sleeping on a park bench. It starts here. It starts with a door closing in your face and the realization that the safety net you thought existed was just a hallucination. Morning came like a bruise, purple and gray and aching. My neck was stiff, and my eyes felt like they were filled with sand. I needed to move. I needed a bathroom. I needed income. I drove to St. Marrow Medical Center. It was a massive public hospital on the edge of the county, the kind of place that never turned anyone away, but made you pay for it with wait times and indifference. I knew they were always hiring. I had managed risk portfolios worth millions. But today, I was going to apply for a job cleaning floors or answering phones. I parked in the visitor lot, hoping no one would notice I stayed longer than the 2-hour limit. I went into the lobby bathroom and tried to make myself look human. I washed my face with gritty pink soap and tried to smooth down my hair with water from the tap. My eyes were red-rimmed. I looked like a ghost. I went to the administration desk and asked for an application. The woman behind the glass handed me a clipboard without looking up. Fill it out. Drop it in the bin. Do not expect a call before next week. Next week. I might freeze to death before next week. I took the clipboard and sat in the main waiting room. It was warm there. That was the most important thing. It smelled of antiseptic, stale coffee, and unwashed bodies. People were coughing. A television in the corner was blaring a morning talk show where everyone was smiling too much. I sat in a plastic chair, staring at the application form. Previous address. I did not have one. Emergency contact. I left it blank. That was when I saw her. She was sitting 3 seats away from me, curled into a tight ball. She looked young, maybe 18 or 19. She was wearing a denim jacket that was far too thin for the weather and oversized sweatpants that looked dirty at the hems. Her hair was a tangled mess of blonde knots, falling over her face like a curtain. But it was her eyes that caught me. She was staring at the automatic sliding doors of the emergency entrance. She was not blinking. Her gaze was intense, terrified, scanning every person who walked in. She looked like a prey animal sensing a predator in the tall grass. She was shaking, not from cold, but from adrenaline. Her leg was bouncing up and down so fast the whole row of connected chairs vibrated slightly. A nurse in blue scrubs walked into the waiting area, holding a clipboard. She looked tired. She scanned the room and her eyes landed on the girl. Addison Lane, the nurse called out. The girl flinched violently, as if she had been struck. She looked at the nurse, then back at the door. She did not answer. Addison, the nurse walked closer. We need to process your admission if you want to see a doctor. Where are your parents? Is there a guardian we can call the girl Addison? Or Addie shook her head frantically. No calls. Honey, you are 18, but you came in here disoriented, the nurse said, her voice softening but still firm with bureaucratic necessity. We need to know who to bill, or who to release you to. You cannot just sit here. Do you have anyone? Addie looked cornered. Her breathing hitched. She looked around the room, her eyes wild. They swept past the old man sleeping with his mouth open, past the mother scolding a toddler, and landed on me. I was watching her. I think she saw something in my face. Maybe she saw the same exhaustion she felt. Maybe she saw the dirt on my boots that matched the dirt on her shoes. She lunged. It happened so fast I did not have time to recoil. She slid out of her chair and grabbed my arm. Her fingers dug into my coat, clutching the fabric with a strength that hurt. Her hands were ice cold. She leaned in close, her smell hitting me rainwater and fear. Please, she whispered. Her voice was a dry rasp, barely audible over the noise of the television. I looked down at her. Her eyes were wide, pleading, desperate. Do not let them take me, she hissed, the words rushing out in a single breath. Just pretend. Please, if they make a call, I am dead. The nurse was standing right there, waiting for an answer. She looked at the girl gripping my arm, then looked at me. Her eyebrows went up in a silent question. Are you with her? The nurse asked me. I looked at the nurse. I looked at the paperwork on my lap that asked for an address I did not have. Then I looked back at Addie. I saw a terror that went beyond medical anxiety. I saw a girl who was standing on the edge of the same cliff I had just fallen off of. My father's voice echoed in my head. Your sister is not worth a penny. I felt a spark of anger in my chest. Not at the girl, not at the nurse, but at the world that discarded people like us, at the fathers who locked doors, at the brothers who watched. I took a breath. I made a choice. Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I am with her. She is with me. I said to the nurse. The words left my mouth before my brain had a chance to process the risk assessment. In my previous life, the life that ended yesterday afternoon, I never made a decision without calculating the potential fallout. I would weigh the variables, project the quarterly losses, and advise caution. But standing in that antiseptic waiting room, smelling the faint chemical scent of floor cleaner and stale coffee, I abandoned all logic. I claimed a stranger. The nurse looked at me, her eyes narrowing slightly behind her glasses. She was tired. I could see the fatigue etched into the lines around her mouth. She did not want to fill out paperwork for a ward of the state. She did not want to call social services and wait on hold for 3 hours while a teenager sat in her lobby. She wanted an easy answer, and I had just given her one. Okay, she said, marking something on her clipboard. If you are the guardian, you need to sign her out if she is not seeking treatment. We cannot have loitering. I nodded, keeping my face perfectly still. I signed a name on the logbook that was not quite mine, scribbling a signature that was illegible enough to be anyone's. Then I turned to the girl. Let us go, I said. Addie stood up. She moved with the silent, fluid grace of someone who is used to making themselves invisible. She did not look at the nurse. She kept her head down, her hair falling forward like a protective curtain, and followed me out the sliding glass doors. The cold hit us instantly. It was a sharp, biting wind that cut through my coat and made my eyes water. We walked across the parking lot in silence. I could hear her breathing, shallow and fast, like a bird that had flown into a window. When we reached my car, I unlocked the doors. She hesitated. She looked at the passenger seat, then at me, her eyes scanning for a trap. Get in, I said, my voice rougher than I intended. It is warm inside. She got in. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. The silence in the car was heavy. I gripped the steering wheel, staring at the brick wall of the hospital ahead of us. What had I just done? I was 34 years old, unemployed, homeless, and technically, I had just assumed liability for a young woman I knew nothing about. If she had drugs on her, if she had stolen something, if she was running from the police, I was now an accessory. I started the engine to get the heater running. I looked at her, up close, in the gray daylight. She looked even worse than she had in the lobby. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, with dark purple circles under her eyes. Her lips were chapped and bleeding slightly at the corner. She was shivering, her hands tucked deep into the pockets of her oversized denim jacket. I am not a guardian, I said quietly, and I do not have a home to take you to. I know, she said. Her voice was low, scratchy. I saw you park last night. I saw you sleeping in the back seat at the supermart. The shame flushed through me, hot and prickly. I thought I had been invisible. I thought my fall from grace was a private tragedy. To know that this girl, this teenager living on the edge, had watched me curl up in a freezing sedan, was humiliating. Then why did you ask me for help? I asked. She turned to look at me. Her eyes were an unsettling shade of gray, intelligent and terrified. Because you looked like you were drowning too, she said. People who are drowning do not try to hold you down. They just want to float. I did not have a response to that. My stomach growled, a loud, angry sound that filled the small space between us. I checked the time on the dashboard. It was 11 in the morning. I had not eaten since yesterday's breakfast. I have $300 to my name, I said. I'm going to buy a sandwich. You can have half. We drove to a gas station 2 miles down the road. I did not want to go back to the supermart. The memory of the night before was too raw. I went inside and bought a prepackaged turkey sub that was on sale for $5.99. I also bought 2 bottles of water. It was a frivolous expense, spending nearly $10 on a single meal, but my body was shaking from low blood sugar. Back in the car, I unwrapped the sandwich. The bread was slightly stale, the lettuce limp and sad. I cut it in half with the plastic knife I had grabbed from the counter and handed the larger piece to Addie. She ate with a ferocity that was painful to watch. She did not take small bites. She devoured it, her eyes darting around the parking lot as she chewed, as if she expected someone to reach through the window and snatch it away. We sat there for a long time after the food was gone. The car idled, wasting gas, but I could not bring myself to turn off the heat. "Who are you running from?" "Addie," I asked. She stiffened. Her hand went to her neck, pulling the collar of her jacket tighter. "I do not remember everything," she said. "It is foggy, like waking up from anesthesia." "Try?" I said gently. She closed her eyes. I could see the rapid movement of her pupils beneath the lids. "A penthouse," she whispered. "High up, floor-to-ceiling glass. You could see the whole city, but it felt like a cage. There was a man, Mr. Vale, I asked. She nodded. He was always on the phone, talking about numbers, margins, collateral. And there was a ring, on his hand, a heavy gold ring with a symbol on it, a triangle split down the middle." She stopped, her breathing hitching again. "He told me not to trust anyone in the house. He said they were all listening." "Who is he?" "Your father." "No," she said quickly. "No, not family. I was working. Maybe. Or staying there. I remember paperwork, stacks of it. And then I remember running. I remember the cold. And the hospital. It sounded like a psychotic break, or a drug-induced haze. As a risk manager, I would have flagged her story as unreliable data, but as a human being sitting next to her, watching the genuine terror vibrate off her skin, I believed her. There was no artifice in her fear. I leaned my head back against the headrest. "I know what it is like," I said, "to have people rewrite your reality." Addie looked at me. "What happened to you?" I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. "My husband, Evan. We were married for 6 years. I thought we were partners. I thought we were building a life, but he was building a separate life with a 20-year-old girl and a stack of credit cards in my name. When I found out, he did not apologize. He told our friends I was paranoid. He told his family I was emotionally unstable. He spun the narrative so fast I got dizzy. I paused, looking out at the gray sky, and then my job. Wexler and Rains. I was a senior analyst. I flagged a discrepancy in a client's portfolio. 2 days later, there was a security breach under my login. They said I leaked sensitive data. I didn't. I would never. But the digital footprint was there. Someone put it there. They fired me, stripped my severance, and blacklisted me. I turned to look at Addie. Yesterday. My father told me I wasn't worth a penny. He shut the door in my face. He believes the lie. Everyone believes the lie because the lie is neat and tidy, and the truth is messy. Addie was staring at me. Her expression had changed. The frantic fear had settled into something colder, something sharper. It was recognition. "You were framed," she said. "Yes." I said, "Just like me." She said. The words hung in the air between us. Just like me. It was a tenuous thread, linking a 34-year-old divorcee and a teenage runaway, but it was strong enough to hold us together for the moment. "I need to find a place for us to sleep," I said, shifting into practical mode. "The car is not sustainable." I pulled out my phone. The battery was at 40%. I dialed the number for the County Housing Assistance line. I put it on speaker so Addie could hear. "All our agents are currently assisting other callers. Your estimated wait time is 45 minutes. We waited. We sat in that gas station parking lot, watching cars come and go, listening to the tinny jazz music on the loop. When a voice finally answered, it sounded exhausted. "I need emergency shelter," I said, "for 2 women. One is 18. I am sorry," the woman on the line said. She sounded like she was reading from a script she hated. "The women's shelter is at capacity. We have a wait list for single beds. Are there children involved?" I said. "Then you are priority tier 4, she said. "I can put you on the list, but it is currently a 6-month wait for placement." 6 months, I asked. my voice rising. It is 20 degrees outside. We can offer you a voucher for a motel. But funding for this month has been exhausted. You can try calling back on the 1st of the month. I hung up. I looked at the phone in my hand. This was the system I had paid taxes into for 15 years. This was the safety net I thought existed for the unfortunate. It was not a net. It was a mirage. I looked at Addie. She did not look surprised. She looked resigned. "We sleep in the car," I said. She nodded. "But we need rules," I said, my voice hardening. "If I am doing this, if I am letting you stay in my space, you need to listen." "Okay," she said. "Rule number 1, no drugs. If I find anything, you are out. I do not care if it is snowing. I am clean," she said. "Rule number 2, no secrets that can get us killed. If someone is actually chasing you, I need to know. I cannot protect us from a threat I cannot see." She hesitated then, looking down at her hands. "And rule number 3, I continued, we are not friends. I am not your mother. I am just a woman who does not want you to freeze to death. Do not get comfortable." We spent the rest of the day in the public library. It was warm, and no one bothered us as long as we pretended to read. I applied for 3 jobs: online dishwasher, night stalker, janitor. I used the library's address on the forms, hoping no one would check. Addie sat across from me, reading a book about birds, her finger tracing the pictures. When the library closed at 9, we went back to the car. I drove to a different parking lot this time, a commuter lot near the train station that allowed overnight parking. It was well lit, which made sleeping hard but dying less likely. I reclined the driver's seat as far back as it would go. Addie curled up in the passenger seat, pulling her knees to her chest. We lay there in the dark, listening to the distant rumble of trains. The cold began to creep back in, seeping through the glass. "Bella," she whispered. "Yeah. You said no secrets." I turned my head. In the dim light of a street lamp, I saw her fumbling with the lining of her denim jacket. There was a small tear in the fabric near the hem. She pushed her fingers into the hole and pulled something out. She held it up. It was a key card. Heavy, made of black metal. Not plastic. It looked expensive. Embossed on the surface in silver was a logo, a stylized triangle split down the middle. Below it was a single word, Valistone. I took it from her. It felt cold and heavy in my palm. It looked like the kind of key that opened doors to places where people like us were arrested for trespassing. "I took it from the office," she said softly. "Before I ran, I do not know why. I just grabbed it. I ran my thumb over the raised letters. Valstone. The name sounded vaguely familiar, like something I had scrolled past on a financial news feed, but I could not place it. "Why did you hide it?" I asked. "Because," she said, turning to look out the window at the empty lot, "if they find me, they find the card. And if they find the card, they will find you too." I gripped the metal card tight. I had told myself I was just giving a girl a ride. I had told myself I was just being a decent human being. But looking at that logo, feeling the weight of it, I realized I had lied to myself. I had not just picked up a stray. I had picked up a detonator. And I had the distinct, sinking feeling that the fuse was already lit. For the next 3 days, we lived on a loop that I began to call the invisible map. It is a geography that exists right on top of the regular world, but normal people never see it. Normal people see a coffee shop. We saw a bathroom code written on a receipt left on a table. Normal people see a library. We saw the only place in the city where you could sit for 6 hours without spending money and not be arrested. Normal people see a 24-hour gym. We saw a free shower trial membership. We developed a rhythm based on survival and shame. In the mornings, we parked the car at a park-and-ride lot where commuters left their vehicles for the train into the city. We blended in with the rush, 2 women fixing their hair in the visor mirrors, looking like we were late for work, rather than waking up from a night of spine-crushing discomfort. We utilized a free 3-day pass at a chain gym called Iron Paradise to shower. I remember standing under the hot water for 20 minutes, scrubbing my skin until it was red, trying to wash off the feeling of the car upholstery that seemed permanently etched into my pores. Addie would shower in the stall next to me, silent, emerging with her wet hair plastered to her skull, looking younger and more fragile than ever. The hardest part was the food. We avoided the soup kitchens at first because Addie was terrified of crowds. She thought every face was looking for her, so we ate cheap. Loaves of white bread, jars of peanut butter, apples that were bruised and discounted. We ate in the car, catching crumbs in our laps, wiping our hands on napkins stolen from gas stations. I spent my afternoons applying for jobs, while Addie read magazines she had pulled from the recycling bin. I sat at the library computer terminal, my fingers flying over the keys, attaching my resume to digital portals. I had a degree. I had 10 years of experience in high-level risk assessment. I had references, though I doubted any of them would pick up the phone now. But every application hit the same wall. The address field. It blinked at me. A demanding cursor waiting for a combination of numbers and street names that I no longer possessed. I tried using my old apartment address, but the background checks would flag it. I tried using a P.I.N.O. box, but the system rejected it as a non-residential location. I realized then that in this country, a fixed address is not just a location. It is a form of character. It is proof that you are stable, reliable, and moral. If you do not have a front door, the system assumes you are broken. I sat there, watching the screen time out, feeling a heavy stone of despair settle in my gut. I was unhireable not because I was incompetent, but because I was erased. While I fought the digital bureaucracy, Addie fought her ghosts. She was twitchy. Every time the library doors opened, her head would snap up. If a man walked in wearing a dark coat, she would shrink into her oversized sweatshirt. One afternoon, a black SUV idled outside the library's glass facade, waiting for a patron. Addie stopped breathing. She slid out of her chair and crawled under the desk, curling into a ball in the dust bunnies near the computer tower. "They are here," she whispered, her voice trembling. I looked out the window. A mother got out of the SUV and ran inside to return a stack of picture books. "It is just a mom." "Addie," I said, reaching down to touch her shoulder. She flinched but did not come out until the car drove away. She did not tell me who they were, not specifically. She just kept saying that they had eyes everywhere. It sounded like paranoia. But I remembered the heavy metal keycard in her pocket, and I remembered the look in her eyes when she said the name Valstone. I decided to use my time for something other than futile job applications. I opened a new browser window, specifically an incognito tab, and typed in the words Valstone Holdings. The search results were sterile: corporate website, stock prices, generic press releases about synergy and future-forward investment strategies. It looked like 1,000 other shell companies designed to look boring so no one would look too closely. Then I added the word missing. Nothing. I tried lawsuit, scandal, investigation. Finally, on the 4th page of results, buried in a cached version of a niche financial blog that had since been taken down, I found a headline: Rumors of High-Level Whistleblower Vanishing Act at Valstone Subsidiary. The article was short, vague, and speculative. It mentioned that a source inside a Valstone internship program had threatened to go to the SEC regarding insurance inflation tactics, only to disappear before a meeting with regulators. The company had issued a statement denying the existence of such an employee. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the library's air conditioning. I pulled a notebook from my bag. It was a habit I could not break. I started a log. I wrote down the date. I wrote down the article title. I wrote down the name of the author. I wrote down everything Addie had said about the penthouse and the man named Vale. I documented the license plates of the cars that seemed to linger too long near us in the parking lots. I was not playing detective. I was building a defense, in my world, the world of risk. If you did not write it down, it did not happen. Evidence was the only shield poor people had against the rich. My phone buzzed on the table, startling both of us. It was a text from Tyler. "You should disappear for a while. Dad is furious. He says you are making a scene by staying in town." I stared at the screen. I was sleeping in a car and washing my armpits in a gym sink. I was hardly making a scene. I was invisible. But to them, My mere existence within a 50-mile radius was an affront. It was a stain on the family portrait. The phone rang immediately after the text. It was my father. I hesitated. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but some deep, conditioned part of me, the part that still wanted to be the good daughter, answered it. "Hello?" I said. "Bella." His voice was calm. It was the voice he used when he was negotiating a contract. "We need to discuss the terms of your situation." "I do not have a situation. Dad, I have a life that is falling apart. You have a mess that you created." He corrected. "Tyler tells me you are still in the area. People talk. It looks bad." "Bella, it looks like we raised a failure." I closed my eyes. "Is that why you called to tell me I am embarrassing you?" "I called to offer you a path," he said. "If you agree to keep quiet about the divorce, specifically about Evan's affairs, and if you agree not to contest the termination at Wexler and Rains, we can discuss a small stipend, enough to get you an apartment in another state. Ohio, perhaps, or Indiana, somewhere quiet." I gripped the phone so hard my knuckles turned white. He was not offering help. He was buying my exile. He wanted me gone, and he wanted me silent. He wanted to ensure that the cracks in our perfect family facade were plastered over with my absence, and if I say no, I asked. There was a pause, a silence so heavy it felt like a physical weight. "Then you are on your own. Bella. And I mean completely. Do not call Tyler. Do not call me. You are a stranger to this house." I looked at Addie, who was watching me with wide, fearful eyes. I looked at the library, filled with strangers who did not know my name. And I realized that I had been a stranger in my father's house for 34 years. I just had not noticed. "Keep your money," I said. I hung up. I blocked the number. Then I blocked Tyler. We left the library and drove to a new spot for the night. A gravel lot behind an abandoned warehouse near the industrial district. It was darker here, less traffic, but it felt safer than being exposed under the lights of the retail strip. Night fell heavy and cold. The temperature was dropping into the 20s. We huddled under the blankets I had taken from my linen closet before I left. "Addie," I said into the darkness, "I found something today. About Valstone." She went rigid next to me. "There was a rumor about a whistleblower." I said, "An intern. That was me," she whispered. Her voice was so quiet, I barely heard it over the wind rattling the window glass. "Tell me," I said. "I was in the accelerated program," she said. "Data entry for the risk assessment division. It was boring. Numbers. Spreadsheets. But one day, I was asked to organize a physical file cabinet in the archives. They thought no one looked at paper anymore." She shifted, pulling her knees to her chest. I found a file labeled Project Ouroboros. I opened it. It was a list of names, hundreds of them. People who had taken out life insurance policies or high-risk loans. But the dates were wrong. The death certificates were predated. "Predated?" I asked, my mind racing. "You mean they were dead before the policy paid out?" "Ako," she said. "I mean the paperwork for the payout was prepared before they died. Sometimes weeks before." I felt the blood drain from my face. That was not insurance fraud. That was murder for profit, or at the very least, calculated negligence on a massive scale. "I took pictures," she said, "with my phone. Just a few pages. I was going to send them to a journalist. But the next day, Mr. Vale called me into his office. The penthouse. He knew. He asked for my phone. He smashed it with a paperweight right in front of me. He told me I was a smart girl, and smart girls know when to look away." "He let you go?" I asked. "No," she said. "He locked me in a room. For 2 days. I heard them talking about disposal. I got out when the cleaning crew came in. I ran. I just ran." She turned to me, her face a pale blur in the shadows. "Bella, I did not just lose a job. I saw the blueprint. That is why they will never stop looking." I sat there, processing the magnitude of what she had said. This wasn't just a corporate scandal. This was a slaughterhouse disguised as a spreadsheet. And my former employer, Wexler and Rains, the firm that had fired me for a security breach, was likely the one insuring or assessing these very portfolios. It connected. It all connected. I was about to speak. to tell her that we needed to go to the FBI, when a sudden, violent thud shook the car. Addie screamed. I jumped, my heart slamming into my throat. Someone had hit the driver's side window with a heavy hand. I scrambled to check the locks. They were down. I looked out the window. A figure stood there, illuminated by the faint moonlight. It was a man. He was wearing a dark jacket. The collar turned up. I could not see his face, but I could see the silhouette of him leaning close to the glass. I reached for the ignition, my hands shaking so bad I dropped the keys. The man hit the window again, harder this time. The glass vibrated, threatening to shatter. Then he spoke. His voice was muffled by the glass, but it was low, calm, and terrifyingly clear. Open the door. Bella. He knew my name. I froze. Addie was sobbing quietly, her hands over her mouth. Give us the girl, the voice said. Give us the girl. And you still have a way out of this. You can drive away. You can start over. Just open the door. I looked at the ignition. The keys were on the floor mat. I looked at Addie. She was not looking at the man. She was looking at me. Her eyes were wide, resigned, waiting for me to make the calculation, waiting for me to decide that her life was worth less than my safety. Your sister is not worth a penny. The words echoed. I grabbed the keys from the floor. I jammed them into the ignition. The man hit the window again, a crack spiderwebbing across the glass. I turned the key. The engine sputtered, groaned, and then roared to life. I did not look at the man. I slammed the car into reverse, tires spinning on the loose gravel, kicking up stones. The man jumped back. I shifted into drive and floored it, the car fishtailing wildly before gripping the pavement. We tore out of the lot, leaving the shadow man behind in the dust. I drove fast, running a stop sign, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I did not give her up. I whispered to myself, I did not give her up. But as I watched the rearview mirror, checking for headlights that might be following, I knew one thing for certain. The invisible map was gone. We were on the radar now, and the hunt had officially begun. The spiderweb crack in the driver's side window was a constant, jagged reminder that our time was up. Every time I checked the rearview mirror, the fracture distorted the reflection of the cars behind us, turning innocent sedans into fractured monsters. We had driven 50 miles south after the attack in the warehouse lot, sleeping for 3 fitful hours in a rest stop near the state line. When the sun came up, pale and watery, we did not look for breakfast. We looked for answers. We found a public library in a town called Oakhaven. It was a small brick building that smelled of damp wool and floor wax. We were the first ones through the doors when they unlocked at 9 in the morning. I sat Addie down at a corner terminal, shielded by a stack of biographies, and I took the seat next to her. Give me the card, I said. Addie pulled the heavy black key card from her pocket. She placed it on the desk between us like a radioactive isotope. Under the fluorescent lights, the silver logo seemed to gleam with a predatory shine, the split triangle, the word Valstone. I opened a search engine. I did not type in the company name this time. A company can have 1,000 addresses. I typed in what I saw. Valstone split triangle logo black metal keycard, residential access. The internet is a vast ocean of noise, but if you know how to filter the static, you can find the signal. I scrolled past generic locksmith ads and corporate branding portfolios. On the third page of image results, I found a match. It was a photo from an Architectural Digest forum, a thread discussing luxury security protocols. The image showed a sleek, high-tech lobby with black marble floors. In the foreground, a resident was holding a card up to a scanner. The card was identical to the one sitting next to my hand. The caption read, Resident Access Point, the Zenith Tower, Port Dominion, New Jersey. Developer Valstone Holdings, Port Dominion. I knew the place. It was a playground for the kind of wealth that does not shout. It whispers. It was a coastal enclave where the driveways were heated and the security guards carried firearms. I looked at Addie. Do you know that name, the Zenith? She stared at the screen, her eyes dilating. She reached out a trembling finger and touched the image of the building. It was a glass needle piercing the sky, cold and sharp. "That is the cage," she whispered. "That is where the penthouse is." I opened a map tab. Port Dominion was 2 hours away. "Is that where Grant Vale lives?" I asked. The name triggered a physical reaction in her. She flinched, pulling her hand back as if the screen had burned her. "Yes," she said. "He has the top 3 floors, private elevator. You need a retina scan to get past the lobby. But the service elevator uses the cards." I switched tabs again. I typed in Grant Vale. The results were polished to perfection. Grant Vale, CEO of Valstone Holdings, Philanthropist of the Year, Board Member of the Children's Health Alliance. Photos showed a handsome man in his early 50s with silver fox hair and a smile that looked warm enough to melt snow. He was pictured shaking hands with senators, cutting ribbons at hospitals, and sitting on a yacht with a golden retriever. He looked like the American dream personified, but I knew that risk management is about looking at the shadow the object casts, not the object itself. I dug deeper. I looked for his business affiliations. I looked for his subsidiaries, and then I saw it. It was a small detail, listed in the footnotes of a corporate social responsibility report from 2 years ago. Valstone Holdings is proud to partner with industry leaders for our Future Risk Internship program, including Wexler and Raines Risk Bureau. My breath hitched in my throat. Wexler and Raines, my firm, the place where I had worked for 7 years, the place that had escorted me out of the building with a box of office supplies and a ruined reputation. I felt a cold sensation spread through my chest, like ice water being injected into my veins. This was not a coincidence. In my line of work, 1 connection is a data point, 2 is a pattern. This was a direct line. "Addie," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "When you were an intern, did you interact with anyone from Wexler and Raines?" She frowned, thinking, "I do not know names," she said, "but the software we used, the risk modeling software. It had a logo on the login screen, W and R, blue letters." I closed my eyes. It was my department. The internship program Addie had been part of, the one where she found the file about the dead people, was utilizing the very systems I managed. I looked at her. "Addie, tell me exactly what you did before you ran. You said you took pictures. Did you send them to anyone?" She nodded, biting her lip. "I tried." She said, "I did not know who to trust. I found an email address in the employee handbook. It was for the Ethics and Compliance Hotline. It said it was anonymous. It said, 'See something, say something.' So I sent an email. I attached the photos of the predated claims. I wrote that there was a scheme to inflate insurance payouts. 'When did you send it?' I asked. 2 weeks ago." She said, "On a Tuesday." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. 2 weeks ago, on a Tuesday. I had been called into a mandatory meeting about a system vulnerability. Our IT department had flagged an external penetration attempt. They claimed a hacker had tried to inject malicious code into the server. They locked down the system for 48 hours to scrub the data. That was not a hacker. That was Addie. And 3 days after that, I was fired. The pieces slammed together in my mind with the force of a car crash. They did not fire me because I was incompetent. They fired me because they needed a scapegoat. They needed to explain why there was a breach in the system, why files had been accessed and moved. They could not admit a whistleblower had exposed them. So they created a narrative a rogue employee me had compromised the data integrity. They used my login. They pinned her cry for help on me, labeled it a security threat, and terminated me to seal the leak. "I am the patch," I whispered. "I am the firewall they built to keep you quiet." Addie looked at me, confusion warring with fear in her gray eyes. "What do you mean, they framed me to cover up your email?" I said, "They destroyed my life to make sure no one would believe whatever evidence you tried to send. If I am the villain, then any data associated with my account becomes suspect. They discredited the messenger before the message could even be read." I felt a surge of nausea. This was corporate gaslighting on an industrial scale. They had taken 2 women, one young and vulnerable, one established and capable, and smashed us against each other to cancel us both out. But there was still one piece missing. How did they get my credentials? I was paranoid about security. I used two-factor authentication. My password was 20 characters long. I need to check something. I said. I opened a new tab. I navigated to my personal cloud storage. Before they had cut my access, I had auto-forwarded the termination notice and the attached evidence of breach packet to my personal email. It was a habit I had picked up from my father: always keep a copy of your own death warrant. I downloaded the PDF file labeled Termination Brooks B PDF. I did not read the text. I knew what the text said. It was legal jargon designed to humiliate me. Instead, I right-clicked on the file and selected Properties. I went to the Details tab. I wanted to see the metadata. Metadata is the digital fingerprint of a file. It tells you who created it, when it was created, and who modified it last. Most people forget to scrub it. I scanned the list. Created February 14th, 4:30 p.m. Author HR admin. Last saved. February 14th, 6:15 p.m. Last saved. By T. Brooks Contractor. I stopped breathing. The library faded away. The smell of damp wool vanished. All I could see was that name, T.W. Brooks, Tyler. My brother was a tech consultant. He worked freelance. I knew he had taken a contract recently, but he had been vague about the client. Just some big data migration. He had said over Sunday dinner, while cutting into a pot roast my father had praised, Tyler, he had access, he had the skills, and most importantly, he had my trust. He knew my security questions. He knew the name of my first dog. He knew the street I grew up on. He did not need to hack me. He just needed to be my brother. The memory of the night on the porch came rushing back, hitting me with new, devastating clarity. My father standing there, holding his scotch, Tyler leaning against the doorframe, looking bored. Your sister is not worth a penny. She is done. It was not an insult. It was a status report. My father knew. He had to know. Tyler would never have done something of this magnitude without authorization from the patriarch. They had sacrificed me. They had literally sold me out to protect a client contract. Tyler had planted the evidence to frame me, ensuring his contract with Wexler and Rains, and by extension, Ballastone, remained secure. I was the collateral damage in my brother's career advancement. I felt a scream building in my throat, hot and jagged, but I swallowed it down. Screaming would get us kicked out of the library. Screaming was for victims. I was not a victim anymore. I was a liability, and liabilities are dangerous. I stared at the screen until the pixels blurred. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. This was a different kind of vibration. It was the hum of a machine coming online. Bella Addie's voice was small. You look scary. Good, I said. I turned to her. I closed the laptop with a snap. We are done running. Addie, she blinked. What? We have been playing defense, I said. We have been sleeping in cars and hiding in bathrooms and waiting for them to catch us. That ends today. But the man at the car? He is a symptom, I said. I know the disease now. I stood up. I felt taller than I had in weeks. The exhaustion was still there, hanging on my bones, but it was fueled by a cold, hard rage. My father thought he had thrown away a broken daughter. He forgot that he was the one who taught me how to analyze structural weaknesses. We are going to Port Dominion, I said. Addie's eyes went wide. To the penthouse. Are you crazy? They will kill us. No, I said. They only kill people who hide in the dark. We are going to walk right up to the front door. We are going to ring the bell. I picked up the black key card from the desk and shoved it into my pocket. My brother sold me for a contract. Addie. My father locked me out in the snow because he thought I was finished. He told Tyler I wasn't worth a penny. I grabbed my bag and looked toward the exit, where the winter sun was shining on the dirty snow. I am going to prove him wrong. I am going to show them exactly how expensive I can be. Let us go. Addie hesitated for a second, looking at the safety of the library stacks. Then she looked at me. She saw the shift. She saw that I was no longer the woman who begged a nurse to lie. She stood up. Okay, she said. We walked out of the library and into the cold. I did not check the rearview mirror when we pulled out of the lot. I did not care who was following us anymore. I wanted them to follow. I wanted them to see exactly where we were going. We were heading to the Jersey Shore, to the glass needle in the sky, to the place where the money lived, and I was going to burn their house down with the truth they thought they had buried. Port Dominion was not just a zip code, it was a fortress disguised as a community. As I drove my battered sedan past the wrought iron gates and onto the heated asphalt of the main thoroughfare, the world changed. The gray slush of the highway disappeared, replaced by pristine, salt-free roads. The air smelled different here, crisp and smelling of the ocean and expensive landscaping, devoid of the diesel fumes that had choked us in the industrial park the night before. I parked my car 3 blocks away from the Zenith Tower. I did not want the valet to see the dent in the fender or the sleeping bag bunched up in the back seat. We walked the rest of the way. The wind off the Atlantic was brutal, but neither of us shivered. We were running on a fuel that burned hotter than adrenaline. The Zenith Tower rose from the coastline like a shard of black glass, piercing the overcast sky. It was beautiful and terrifying. It looked less like a home and more like a monument to untouchable power. I stopped at the bottom of the wide marble steps. I looked at Addie. She was pale, her hands buried deep in the pockets of her denim jacket, clutching the stolen keycard like a talisman. Her eyes were fixed on the revolving doors, scanning for threats. "Listen to me," I said, grabbing her arm gently. "We do not look down. We do not apologize. We walk in there like we own the mortgage. If you act like you belong." People hesitate, and hesitation is the only window we need. She nodded, swallowing hard. We walked up the steps. The automatic doors slid open with a whisper. The lobby was a cavern of silence. The floors were black marble, polished to a mirror shine that reflected our disheveled silhouettes. The ceiling was 3 stories high, adorned with a chandelier that looked like a frozen explosion of crystals. It was warm, quiet, and smelled faintly of white tea and money. We crossed the floor, our boots making squeaking sounds that seemed deafening in the hush. A security guard in a dark suit tracked us with his eyes, but did not move. We were anomalies, flaws in the aesthetic, but we were moving with purpose. I marched straight to the concierge desk, a monolithic slab of granite manned by a woman who looked like she had been carved out of the same stone. She was typing on a keyboard, her expression one of professional boredom. She did not look up until I placed my hands flat on the cold surface of the desk. "I need to see Grant Vale," I said. She stopped typing. She looked at my windblown hair, my cheap coat, and the dark circles under my eyes. Then she looked at Addie, who was staring at the floor. Her lip curled slightly, a microscopic gesture of disdain. "Mr. Vile does not take walk-in appointments," she said, her voice smooth and dismissive. "If you have a delivery, please use the service entrance on the south side." "I am not a delivery," I said, "and I am not an appointment." "Then you are trespassing," she said, reaching for the phone on her desk. "I will have security escort you out." I leaned in closer. "Tell him I have the file," I said. Her hand hovered over the receiver. "Tell him the internship is over." I continued, keeping my voice low but hard. "And tell him the witness he thought was missing has come home." The woman froze. The professional mask slipped for a fraction of a second, revealing genuine confusion and a flicker of alarm. She looked at Addie again, this time really seeing her. She saw the blonde hair, the terrified posture, the familiarity that she couldn't quite place but knew was dangerous. She picked up the phone, but she did not dial security. She pressed a single speed dial button. She spoke into the receiver, her voice a hushed murmur. "Sir, there are 2 women in the lobby. One of them claims, yes, I understand." She hung up and looked at us with new eyes. The disdain was gone, replaced by wariness. "Mr. Vale will see you," she said. "Please follow Mr. Henderson." The security guard who had been watching us stepped forward. He did not smile. He gestured toward a hallway located behind the main elevator bank. "This way," he said. He did not take us to the elevators that led to the penthouse. He led us down a corridor lined with abstract art, to a heavy wooden door at the end. He opened it and ushered us inside. "Wait here," he said. The door clicked shut. I heard the distinct sound of a lock engaging from the outside. We were not in a reception area. We were in a boardroom, windowless and soundproofed. A long mahogany table dominated the space, surrounded by 12 leather chairs. There was a credenza with a coffee machine that looked like it had never been used. The air was stale. I pulled out my phone. "No service," I said. Addie pulled out hers. "Nothing. Signal jammers," I said, putting the phone away. "They are isolating us. This is not a meeting. It is a containment protocol." Addie began to hyperventilate. She backed into the corner of the room, sliding down the wall until she was crouching on the carpet. "They are going to kill us," she whispered. "We walked right into the trap. You said we would be safe. You said we would fight. We are fighting." "Addie," I said, though my own heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "We forced them to acknowledge us. That is the first step." I pulled a chair out from the table and sat down. Facing the door, I crossed my legs. I smoothed the fabric of my jeans. I forced my breathing to slow down. I needed to be the anchor. If I drifted, we both drowned. 10 minutes passed, then 20. It was a power play. They wanted us to sweat. They wanted us to imagine the worst, so that when they finally arrived, we would be desperate for any mercy they offered. Finally, the lock clicked. The door opened. Grant Vale walked in. He looked exactly like his photos, yet entirely different. The photos captured the charm, the philanthropy, the smile, in person. He was a vacuum. He sucked the oxygen out of the room. He was wearing a navy suit that cost more than my father's house, tailored to perfection. He did not look angry. He looked efficient. He looked like a man who had a busy schedule and resented the interruption. He did not look at me. He looked straight at the corner, at Addie. His expression did not change. There was no shock, no pity. It was the look a mechanic gives a broken engine part. A mixture of annoyance and assessment. "Addison," he said. His voice was rich. Baritone. The kind of voice that convinces shareholders to vote against their own interests. "You look unwell." Addie made a small, whimpering sound and pressed her face into her knees. Grant turned his gaze to me. His eyes were a pale, icy blue. He scanned me from head to toe, noting the mud on my boots, the tension in my shoulders. He was assessing my price tag. "I assume you are the driver," he said. "I am Bella Brooks." I said, "Ah, yes, the risk analyst. We have heard of you. Unfortunate business at Wexler and Rains. A security breach is a career ender. Is it not?" He walked to the head of the table and sat down. He did not offer us a seat. He placed his hands on the mahogany surface, fingers interlaced. "Let us skip the theatrics. Ms. Brooks," he said, "you have something that belongs to my company. You have brought it back. I appreciate the delivery, although your methods are crude. Addie is not a package." I said, "She is a human being." Grant smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. "Everything is an asset or a liability. Bella. May I call you Bella? You are currently holding a liability. I am offering to take it off your hands." He reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. I tensed, expecting a weapon. He pulled out a checkbook. He uncapped a fountain pen. "How much?" he asked. I stared at him. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. "Excuse me," I said. "How much do you want?" he repeated, his tone bored. "To walk out of that door, get in your car, and forget you ever came to Port Dominion. To forget the girl, to forget the file. Everyone has a number. Your brother, Tyler, certainly did. His number was a consulting contract and a seat at the table. What is yours? 50,000, 100,000. It was a slap. It was a physical blow delivered with a pen. He was stripping me naked, reducing my entire existence, my morality, my anger, to a negotiation. He thought I was here to sell Addie back to the slaughterhouse. Addie let out a sob. She crawled toward me, grabbing the leg of my pants. "Bella, please," she begged. "Please." I looked down at her. I felt her trembling against my leg. Then I looked at Grant Vale. I saw the arrogance in his posture. He thought he had won. He thought he understood the game because he had written the rules. I stood up. I am not my brother. I said. Grant paused. He looked up. Pen hovering over the paper. 200,000. He said. Cash. Tax-free. You can start over. Buy a house. Get your reputation scrubbed. I do not want your money. I said, my voice rising, I want to know why you are killing people for insurance payouts. I want to know why you destroyed my career to cover it up. And I want to know why you are hunting an 18-year-old girl like she is an animal. Grant sighed. He capped the pen and put the checkbook away. The mask of civility dropped completely. You are making a mistake, Ms. Brooks. You are currently holding a mentally unstable young woman against her will, he said. We have security footage of you taking her from the hospital. We have footage of you dragging her in here. That is kidnapping. That is a federal offense. And demanding answers in exchange for her safety. That is extortion. He leaned back. I can have the police here in 5 minutes. I have the district attorney on speed dial. By tonight, you will be in a cell, and Addison will be in a private facility receiving the help she needs, and no one will ever hear from either of you again. Fear spiked in my chest, cold and sharp. He was right. He had the power. He had the narrative. But I had the work. I pulled out my notebook. I opened it to the page where I had logged everything. I have a log, I said. My voice was steady, surprising even me. I have documented every interaction since I found her. I have the license plate of the SUV that followed us. I have the timestamp of the attack in the warehouse parking lot. I have the metadata from the file my brother planted on my server. Grant laughed. A notebook, and that is your leverage. It is not just a notebook, I said. I emailed a copy of this log to a dead drop server before I walked in here. It is set to release to 5 major news outlets and the FBI if I do not enter a code every 12 hours. It was a lie, a bluff. I had no dead drop. I had no code. But I knew risk, and I knew that for a man like Grant Vale, the possibility of a leak was just as dangerous as the leak itself. His smile vanished. You are playing a dangerous game. Bella, I am not playing. I said, I am mitigating risk. And right now, Mr. Vale, you are the risk. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing. He was recalculating. He was realizing that I was not a desperate woman looking for a handout. I was a wall standing between him and the loose end he needed to cut. Just then, the handle of the door turned. Grant frowned. He looked toward the door, annoyed. Do not come in, he snapped. The door opened anyway. A woman stood there. She was in her late 40s, elegant, wearing a silk blouse and linen trousers, but she looked shattered. Her hair was slightly askew, and her eyes were red-rimmed and glassy, as if she had been crying or medicated for a decade. Marianne, Grant said, his voice sharp. Go back upstairs. This is business. The woman Marianne Vale did not look at her husband. She stepped into the room, her gaze sweeping past him, past me, and landing on the floor in the corner. She looked at Addie. Addie had stopped crying. She was staring up at the woman with an expression of pure, unadulterated horror. Marianne walked forward. She moved like a sleepwalker. She dropped to her knees on the expensive carpet, ignoring the dirt on Addie's clothes. She reached out a trembling hand. Addie flinched back, pressing herself into the drywall. Marianne's voice was a whisper, broken and jagged. You are still alive, she said. Oh, God, they said you were gone. They said you ran away. Grant stood up abruptly. Marianne, stop. She's confused. She is sick. Marianne ignored him. Tears were streaming down her face. She looked at Addie with a hunger that was terrifying to witness. It was the look of a mother looking at a resurrection. I knew you would come back, Marianne sobbed. I knew it. My baby. My sweet girl. I stood there, frozen. The twist hit me like a physical blow. Addie wasn't just an intern. She wasn't just a random employee who saw a file. She was their daughter. It made sense. The penthouse access, the hush-hush nature of the hunt. The reason Grant hadn't just killed her immediately, this was a family tragedy, a mentally ill daughter running away, a father trying to contain the scandal. For a second, I doubted everything. Had I kidnapped a troubled girl from her loving parents? Was I the villain? I looked at Addie. She was not looking at Marianne with love. She was looking at her with revulsion. She slapped Marianne's hand away. The sound echoed in the silent room. Addie pushed herself up, scrambling to get behind me again. She gripped my arm so hard her fingernails pierced my skin through my coat. "I am not your daughter," Addie screamed. The room went dead silent. Marianne froze. Her hand hovered in the air. Grant's face went white, not with anger, but with something else. Fear. Genuine, unmasked fear. Addie pointed a shaking finger at Marianne, then at Grant. "I am not your daughter," she repeated, her voice shaking with rage. "I am the spare." Marianne made a sound like a wounded animal and collapsed onto the floor, curling into herself. I looked at Grant. He sank back into his chair, looking suddenly old, and in that moment, I realized the secret we were holding was not just about insurance fraud. It wasn't just about money. We had walked into a house built on a graveyard, and Addie was the ghost they had refused to bury. The reality of who she was and who she wasn't was a weapon far more dangerous than any file I could have downloaded. The destruction of a human life does not happen with a bang. It happens with a notification sound. We had managed to leave the Zenith Tower without being arrested, mostly because Grant Vale was too paralyzed by Addie's revelation to call the police immediately. We drove north, aimless and exhausted, until we found a motel that accepted cash and did not ask for identification. It was a roach-infested box with peeling wallpaper, but it had a door that locked. We slept for 4 hours. When I woke up, the world I knew had been erased and replaced with a funhouse mirror reflection that made me look like a monster. I checked my phone. It was vibrating incessantly. A steady hum of digital hate. The video had dropped 3 hours ago. It was grainy footage taken from a security camera in the lobby of the Zenith Tower. It showed me hair wild, coat dirty, looking frantic, slamming my hands on the concierge desk. It showed Addie cowering behind me. It showed Grant Vale walking out, looking calm and reasonable. The audio had been stripped. Without the words, without the context of my demand for truth or his checkbook offer, it looked exactly like what the caption said it was. Unhinged homeless woman harasses Valistone CEO, claims to have kidnapped missing witness. It was viral. It was on Twitter. It was on TikTok. It was everywhere. I scrolled through the comments, my stomach turning into a knot of cold lead. Look at her eyes. She is on meth. That poor girl behind her looks terrified. This is Bella Brooks. She got fired from Wexler and Rains last week for leaking client data. She is spiraling. They had my name. They had my photo from my old LinkedIn profile side by side with a screenshot of my dirty face in the lobby. They had dug up my divorce filings. She is a grifter. Her husband left her because she was abusive. Now she is trying to extort a billionaire. I dropped the phone on the bedspread. It felt hot to the touch. They did not just spin the story, I whispered. They inverted it. Addie was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. She was watching the local news on the small, bolted-down television. "Turn it up," she said. Her voice was flat. I reached for the remote, but my hand froze when I saw the face on the screen. It was my father. He was standing on the front lawn of the house in Cedar Hollow, the house I was kicked out of. He was wearing his gray cardigan, looking frail and respectable. A microphone was thrust in his face. Tyler was standing next to him, wearing a dark suit, his head bowed in a performance of somber support. "Mr. Brooks," the reporter asked, "do you have any comment on your daughter's behavior?" My father sighed. He looked directly into the camera. It was a look I knew well. It was the look he used to give me when I got a B on a report card. A look of profound, curated disappointment. "We love Bella," my father said. "But we have been worried about her mental state for a long time. She has always been unstable. She tends to self-destruct when things do not go her way. We tried to help her. We offered her a place to stay, but she refused. She chose the streets." He paused to wipe a non-existent tear from his eye. "We just want her to come home and face the consequences of her actions. We are praying for her." The camera panned to Tyler. My brother looked up, his eyes meeting the lens. He did not look like the man who had planted a file to frame me. He looked like a saint. "I just want my sister to get help," Tyler said softly. "She is not herself. If anyone sees her, please, do not approach her. She can be volatile. Just call the police." I turned off the TV. The silence in the room was deafening. "They did it," I said, staring at the blank screen. "They publicly diagnosed me. Now, anything I say is just the rambling of a crazy woman." Addie looked at me. There were tears streaming down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt on her cheeks. "They made you a monster," she said, "just like they made me. That is how they win. Bella, they do not kill you. They just make it so no one will listen to you when you scream." I walked over to the window and peered through the blinds. A police cruiser drove slowly past the motel. It did not stop, but my heart hammered against my ribs. "We have to move," I said. We did not get far. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered it because I was expecting it to be the detective Diane Mercer had mentioned, or maybe a journalist who actually wanted the truth. Ms. Brooks. It was a man's voice, authoritative, bored, speaking. "This is Detective Miller from the Port Dominion Police Department. We received an anonymous tip regarding your location. We also have a statement from Mr. Grant Vale regarding an incident at his residence this morning." I gripped the steering wheel. We were parked behind a rusted dumpster at a gas station, hiding in plain sight. "I did not commit a crime," I said. "I went to ask a question." "That is not what the report says," Miller replied. "The report alleges trespassing, harassment, and possible custodial interference regarding an at-risk adult. We are not issuing a warrant yet. Ms. Brooks, we want to hear your side. We would like you to come in for a voluntary statement." I laughed. A dry, bitter sound. Voluntary. That was the trap. If I went in, they would hold me for 48 hours while they processed the paperwork. They would separate me from Addie. And once Addie was alone, she would disappear back into the Valstone machine. "I cannot do that. Detective, if you do not come in," Miller said, his voice dropping an octave, "we will have to escalate this to a manhunt. You do not want that. You are already trending on Twitter. Ms. Brooks, do not make it worse." I hung up. I pulled the SIM card out of my phone and cracked it in half. I drove. I did not know where I was going. I just knew I had to keep moving. The road felt like a treadmill. No matter how fast I drove, the walls were closing in. That evening, as we sat in the car eating cold soup from a can, my burner phone buzzed. I had bought a prepaid phone at a convenience store an hour ago. Only one person had the number Diane Mercer, the lawyer I was hoping to retain if I ever got the money. But this text was not from Diane. "I have something you need. Meet me. Alone." I stared at the screen. The number was familiar. I had deleted it from my contacts the day I signed the divorce papers. But I knew the digits by heart. It was Evan, my ex-husband. I typed back, my fingers shaking. "What do you have?" The reply came instantly. "I know about the file Tyler planted, and I know who paid for it, but I need a favor." I looked at Addie. She was asleep in the passenger seat, her head resting against the cold window. She looked exhausted, her face pale and drawn. She was trusting me to navigate a minefield, and I was running out of safe steps. I texted back, "We're the Golden Griddle on Route 9. 1 hour. Come alone, or I walk." I started the car. I left Addie at the public library near the diner. I gave her the car keys and $20. "Lock the doors." I told her, "If I'm not back in 90 minutes, you drive. You drive until you run out of gas. And then you run. Do not wait for me." She grabbed my hand. "Bella, do not go. It is a trick, I know," I said, "but tricks are the only things we have left to play with." The Golden Griddle was a relic of the 50s, smelling of bacon grease and stale coffee. I walked in, pulling my coat tight around me. I felt exposed. I felt like every person in the booths was looking at me, recognizing the crazy woman from the viral video. Evan was sitting in a booth at the back. He looked good, better than good. He was wearing a new leather jacket and a watch I knew he could not afford on his salary as a junior sales rep. He had a plate of fries in front of him, but he wasn't eating. He was checking his reflection in the silverware. I slid into the booth opposite him. "You look like hell, Bella," he said, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "What do you want?" Evan, I asked, keeping my hands on the table. "I saw the news," he said, dipping a fry into ketchup. "Your dad really did a number on you." "Unstable. That is a tough label to shake, especially when you are looking for work." He took a bite, chewing slowly. "I have a proposition," he said. "I am listening." "I signed a deal today," he said. "A representation deal. A PR firm approached me. They want to tell my side of the story. The story of the long-suffering husband who tried to save his wife from her own madness. It pays well." "Bella." "Very well." I felt a surge of bile in my throat. He was monetizing my destruction. "But," he continued, leaning in, "I can kill the story. I can tell them I want to reconcile. I can tell the press that your dad is lying, that Tyler is a snake, and that you are the victim here." "And why would you do that?" I asked. "You hate me. I do not hate you." "Bella, I just love money, and right now, you are worth more to me as a redemption arc than a villain. But I need something first." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket and slid it across the sticky table. "What is this?" I asked. "A public statement," he said. "You sign it, you post it. It says that the accusations of infidelity during our divorce were false. It says that you made them up because you were having a mental health crisis. You clear my name. Bella, you make me look like a saint who was falsely accused. You do that, and I give you the proof that Tyler rigged your computer." I stared at him. He wanted me to lie. He wanted me to humiliate myself, to rewrite history, to absolve him of the pain he caused me, just so I could get a weapon to fight my brother. "It is a good trade," Evan said. "You get your career back. I get my reputation back. Win-win." "How do I know you have the proof?" I asked. Evan smirked. He tapped his phone. "Tyler is sloppy. Bella. He bragged about it. He sent me screenshots of the metadata injection. He wanted me to know he handled you. He thinks we are bros now because I helped him get in touch with the PR firm that is managing this whole crisis for Valstone." My blood ran cold. "Tyler arranged the PR firm?" I asked. Evan nodded. "Who do you think advised your dad to go on TV? Tyler is running the show." "Bella. He is not just the tech guy. He is the architect. He is building a career on burying you." I looked at the paper in front of me. The apology, it was disgusting. It was a lie. But then I looked at Evan. I saw the arrogance in his eyes. He thought I was desperate. He thought I was the same woman who had cried when he left, the same woman who had begged for an explanation. He did not know I had changed. He did not know that losing everything had clarified my vision. I reached into my pocket. I did not pull out a pen. I pulled out my hand. Empty. "I am not signing that. Evan." His smile dropped. "Then you are dead in the water. I will go on air tomorrow. I will tell them you threatened me. I will tell them you are dangerous. Do it," I said. I slid out of the booth. "You are making a mistake." He called after me. People turning to stare. "You are walking away from the only lifeline you have." I walked out of the diner and into the cold night air. My heart was pounding, but my mind was clear. I walked around the corner of the building, into the shadows where I had parked the car. I pulled my phone, the burner phone, from my pocket. I pressed the stop button on the recording app. I played it back. The audio was crisp. "Tyler is running the show. Bella. He is not just the tech guy. He is the architect. He is building a career on burying you. He sent me screenshots of the metadata injection. He wanted me to know he handled you. I did not need his screenshots. I needed his confession. And he had just given it to me because he was too busy admiring his own reflection to notice I wasn't arguing. He thought revenge was about shouting. He thought it was about winning the moment. I saved the file. I backed it up to 3 different cloud accounts. I got back into the car. Addie was sitting up, her eyes wide. "Did you get it?" she asked. I looked at the phone in my hand. "I got something better." I said, I got the first brick. I started the engine. Where are we going? Addie asked. To find a lawyer. I said, and this time, we are not paying with money. We are paying with their own words. The media was burning my effigy. My father was mourning a daughter who was still alive. My brother was building a throne on my grave. But they had made one critical error. They assumed I was trying to save my reputation. I wasn't. I was done with reputation. I was coming for their reality. Diane Mercer's office did not look like the kind of place where you took down a billion-dollar conglomerate. It was located above a Thai takeout restaurant in a strip mall 3 towns over from Port Dominion. The stairs smelled of lemongrass and old carpet. The waiting room was the size of a closet, filled with magazines that were 3 years old. But Diane Mercer herself was terrifying. She was a small woman, barely 5 feet tall, with gray hair chopped into a severe bob and glasses that hung on a chain around her neck. She did not shake my hand when we walked in. She pointed to 2 plastic chairs across from her desk, which was buried under avalanches of manila folders. Sit, she said. Do not touch anything. That pile on the left is a class action against a pharmaceutical company, and if it slides, I will sue you too. I sat. Addie sat next to me, her hands tucked between her knees. I need to know if I have a case, I said. Diane looked at me over the rim of her glasses. You are the woman from the video, she said. The one who supposedly kidnapped the Valstone girl. I did not kidnap her. I said, I saved her. Diane sighed. She pulled a yellow legal pad from under a stack of papers. In the court of public opinion, you are a kidnapper and a lunatic. In a court of law, we might have a shot, but only if you stop acting like a victim and start acting like a plaintiff. She clicked a pen. I need 3 things, Bella, and if you cannot give them to me, you can walk back out that door and save us both the time. First, I need a timeline, not a story, not a sob story about your divorce or your dad being mean. I need a chronological list of factual events. Second, I need an independent witness, someone who is not you. And third, and most importantly, I need a clean motive. If a jury smells that you are doing this for money, we lose. Valstone has more money. They can buy a better narrative. We need to prove you are doing this for something they cannot buy. I reached into my bag. I pulled out my notebook, the one with the cracked spine where I had logged every license plate, every time stamp, and every suspicion since the night I left my father's house. I placed it on the desk. Then I pulled out the flash drive containing the metadata from the file Tyler had planted on my server. And finally, I placed my phone on the desk. This is the timeline, I said, pointing to the notebook. This is the smoking gun that proves I was framed. And this phone has a recording of my ex-husband admitting that he was paid to lie about me, and that my brother, Tyler Brooks, orchestrated the PR campaign to destroy my reputation. Diane looked at the pile of evidence. She did not smile, but her eyebrows went up about 1/4 of an inch. And the witness, she asked. I turned to Addie. Addie looked at Diane. She was shaking, just a little, but her chin was up. I am the witness, Addie said. My name is Addison Lane. I am 18 years old. I am not mentally incompetent, and I have a file encrypted in my head that proves Valstone Holdings is murdering people for insurance payouts. Diane stared at Addie for a long moment. She was assessing her credibility, her stability, her ability to withstand a cross-examination that would try to tear her apart. If we do this, Diane said, her voice dropping to a serious, almost gentle tone, they will come for you, not with guns, maybe, but with lawyers, with doctors, with your parents. They will try to declare you unfit. They will try to bury you in a psychiatric hold. I know, Addie said. They already tried. I will need to file for an emergency protective order, Diane said. We need to get you into the system as a cooperating witness before they can file for conservatorship. That means a safe house, not a hotel, a state-sanctioned location. It will be boring. It will be lonely. You cannot have a phone. Addie looked at me. I nodded. It was the only way. I will go, Addie said. Diane picked up the phone on her desk. She dialed a number. "Get me Judge Holloway," she said into the receiver. "Tell him I have a whistleblower on a capital fraud case and I need a rush on a protective custody order. Yes, tonight." She hung up and looked at me. "Now, let us talk about your brother. For the next 4 hours, we built a war room." Diane scanned every page of my notebook. She listened to the recording of Evan 3 times, taking notes in a shorthand that looked like hieroglyphics. She analyzed the metadata from the Wexler and Rains file, but it was when she started digging into the background of the players that the room got cold. Diane was a hunter. She had access to databases that I, as a risk manager, only dreamed of. She followed the money. She traced the connections between Valstone, Wexler, and Rains, and the people who had destroyed me. She turned her monitor around so I could see. "Here is the connection," she said, pointing to a complex web of corporate entities. "Valstone Holdings pays a retainer to Wexler and Rains for risk assessment. That is standard. But look here." She pointed to a line item in the Wexler and Rains client list. It was buried under a subsidiary code, but Diane had unmasked it. Client 8940. The Brooks Family Charity Fund. I frowned. "That is my family's foundation." I said, "It is small. My dad uses it to support local libraries and parks. It has nothing to do with this." Diane clicked a few more keys. "Does it?" she asked. She pulled up the transaction history. "Your father's small charity fund has received 3 separate donations in the last 18 months, all from anonymous donors. All in the amount of exactly $50,000. And each donation was made within 48 hours of a consulting fee being paid out from the fund to a freelance technology vendor." She looked at me. "Who is the vendor?" "Bella." I looked at the tax ID number on the screen. I recognized it. I had seen it on Tyler's invoices when I used to help him with his taxes years ago. "It is Tyler," I whispered. Diane nodded. "This is not just about your brother wanting a job. Bella, this is a laundry cycle. Valstone or someone connected to them donates to your dad's charity to make the money look clean. Your dad's charity pays Tyler for IT services that probably never happened. Tyler does the dirty work for Valstone, like framing his sister." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My father knew. He wasn't just a disappointed parent who thought I was a failure. He was a participant. He had used his own charitable foundation, the one named after my mother, to wash the money that paid for my destruction. He kicked me out of the house not because he was angry, but because I was a risk. I was a loose cannon who might look too closely at the books. He had called me worthless to my face, while collecting $50,000 to keep the family secret safe. "He used me," I said, my voice shaking. "He used me as a distraction. As long as everyone was looking at Crazy Bella, no one was looking at the charity fund." Diane sat back in her chair. "That is your motive," she said. "What you are not doing this for money," she said firmly. "You are doing this to expose a criminal enterprise that used your family trust to facilitate fraud. That is a noble cause. That plays well to a jury. Daughter discovers corruption in her own home and sacrifices everything to stop it. That is the story we tell." My phone buzzed on the desk. I looked at it. A text message. It was from Tyler. I picked it up. My hands were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by a cold, surgical anger. "Stop it. Bella, you are making a mistake. You cannot win against these people. Dad is having chest pains. Do you want to kill him? Just go away. I can send you cash. Just stop." I read the words out loud. Diane snorted. "Chest pains. The oldest trick in the book." I looked at the message again. I didn't see a threat. I didn't see power. For the first time, I saw what was really there. "He is scared," I said. Diane looked at me. Read it again. I said, "You cannot win. He is not saying I will crush you. He is saying, please stop because if you win, I go to prison." He is offering cash. Tyler never offers cash unless he is desperate. I put the phone down. I did not reply. "We are not going to sue Valstone for wrongful termination." I said, "That is what they expect. They expect me to come begging for my job back." Diane raised an eyebrow. "Then what is the plan?" "We go after the contract," I said. I stood up and walked to the whiteboard on Diane's wall. I picked up a marker. Wexler and Raines is a bureaucracy, I explained. I worked there for 7 years. Nothing happens without a 3-step approval process. If Tyler planted that file, someone internally had to approve his remote access credentials. Someone had to sign off on the security audit that flagged me. I drew a box. There is a vice president of operations. I said, his name is Marcus Dean. He is a coward. He signs whatever is put in front of him, but he keeps a paper trail to cover his own rear end. I drew a line from the box. If we can subpoena Marcus Dean's internal communications, not the official reports, but his drafts, his emails to Tyler, we will find the smoking gun. We will find the order to frame me. Diane nodded slowly. She was smiling now, a shark-like smile. If we prove the frame-up, she said, then the dismissal is void. If the dismissal is void, then your credibility is restored. And if your credibility is restored, then Addie's testimony becomes bulletproof. I finished, and Valstone collapses. Diane said. She stood up and extended her hand. This time, I took it. Her grip was iron. I will draft the subpoena for Marcus Dean first thing in the morning, Diane said, and I will get the marshals here for Addie within the hour. I turned to Addie. She looked small in the big plastic chair, but her eyes were clear. Are you ready? I asked. She nodded. Make them pay. Bella, not money. Make them pay for the time they stole from us. I looked at the text from Tyler one last time before I deleted it. You can't win. He was wrong. I had already won the most important battle. I had stopped wanting their approval. Now, I just wanted their surrender. I turned to Diane. Let us burn it down, I said, but let us do it legally. Diane laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. That is the best way to burn things, she said. The fire burns hotter when you use the law as fuel. We spent the rest of the night finalizing the strategy. We were not going to attack Grant Vale directly. He was too insulated. We were not going to attack my father directly. He was too sympathetic. We were going to attack the paperwork. We were going to find the one signature, the one email, the one digital footprint that proved the conspiracy, and I knew exactly where to look, because for 10 years, I had been the one teaching them how to hide it. I knew where the bodies were buried because I had designed the cemetery. They just forgot that gravediggers have shovels too. The fluorescent lights in Diane Mercer's office hummed with a sound that felt like a drill pressing into my temple. We had been awake for 30 hours. The empty coffee cups on the desk were beginning to look like a skyline of a city built on caffeine and desperation. Diane was staring at her computer screen, her face illuminated by the blue glow. She had been tracking the digital breadcrumbs of the file that destroyed my career, the risk assessment protocol document that had been modified to look like I leaked it. We knew Tyler had done it. We knew the metadata bore his username. But in digital forensics, who is often less important than where? Got you, Diane whispered. I leaned forward. What is it? Diane turned the monitor toward me. It showed a map of the local area, overlaid with a web of red lines connecting IP addresses. One line was thicker than the others. It originated from the Wexler and Raines server and terminated at a specific residential location in Cedar Hollow. The modification did not happen from a coffee shop, Diane said, tapping the screen. It did not happen from a burner phone. The IP address that logged into your account as Brooks is registered to a static business line. She paused, letting the weight of the revelations settle. It is registered to the Brooks Family Charity Fund. Bella. The physical address is 44 Elm Street. I felt the blood drain from my face. 44 Elm Street was not an office building. It was my father's house. Specifically, it was the study on the first floor, the room with the mahogany desk and the smell of pipe tobacco where I was never allowed to play as a child. Tyler didn't just frame me, I said, my voice hollow. He did it sitting in my father's chair. Diane nodded. Which means your father knew. You do not install a dedicated business server in a home office without the homeowner knowing. I stood up. I needed to move. I felt physically sick, as if the betrayal was a toxic substance circulating in my blood. My father had not just turned a blind eye. He had hosted the execution. I pulled out my phone. What are you doing? Diane asked. I am confirming the asset allocation, I said, slipping back into the language of my profession to keep from screaming. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the second ring. He sounded tired, breathless, as if he had been running. Bella, he said, I told you not to call. You lied to me. Dad, I did not lie, he said, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. I told you the truth. You are finished. You told me I wasn't worth a penny. I said, but that is not true. Is it? I was worth exactly $50,000. That is the consulting fee the charity paid Tyler 2 days after I was fired. Silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt. I know the hack came from your study. Dad. I continued, my voice trembling with a cold rage. I know you let him do it. Why I am your daughter. I did everything right. I got the degree. I got the job. I married the man you liked. Why did you sell me out for him? My father sighed. It was a long, rattling sound. You still do not understand business. Bella, you never did. You look at the world in terms of right and wrong. I look at it in terms of yield. What is that supposed to mean? It means you are a cost, he said. His voice was devoid of emotion, stripping me down to a line item on a ledger. You are emotional. You are high maintenance. You bring scrutiny. Tyler is an investment. He brings solutions. When a limb becomes gangrenous, you cut it off to save the body. You were the gangrene, Bella. I stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, tears drying instantly in the heat of my anger. He did not see me as a person. He saw me as a bad quarterly report. And what happens when the investment fails? Dad. I asked, because I am going to bankrupt you. You can try, he said. But Tyler has friends, powerful friends. Do not come back here, Bella. For your own sake. The line went dead. I lowered the phone. I looked at Addie, who was sitting in the corner, watching me with wide, fearful eyes. She had heard enough to understand. He called me a cost. I said to the room, a sunk cost. Addie stood up. She walked over to the desk and looked at the picture of Tyler that Diane had printed out from his social media. It was a photo of him on a boat, wearing sunglasses, holding a champagne glass. She stared at it for a long time. Her breathing shifted, becoming shallow and rapid. She reached out and touched the face in the photo. I know that voice, she whispered. I looked at her. You mean you recognize him from when we visited? No, she said, shaking her head. I mean I know him from before. She closed her eyes, her face twisting in concentration as she pulled a memory from the dark water of her trauma. The apartment, she said. After Mr. Vale caught me, they took me to an empty apartment. There was no furniture, just a mattress. I was locked in the bedroom, but the walls were thin. She opened her eyes and looked directly at me. 2 men were talking in the living room. One was the security guard. The other one had a laugh, a sharp, barking laugh, like a seal. That is Tyler, I said. He laughs when he thinks he is the smartest person in the room. He was on the phone, Addie said. He was talking about you. Me. He said. She paused, trying to get the words exactly right. He said, the sister is handled. I planted the file. She is toxic now. No one will believe a word she says. I felt a chill run down my spine. And then he said, Addie's voice broke. He said, the sister is done. Now we just need to clean up the girl. Make it look like an overdose. I will send the crew tonight. The room went silent. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. This changed everything. Tyler wasn't just a hacker. He wasn't just a corporate saboteur protecting a client. He was a cleaner. He was directly involved in the conspiracy to murder Addie. My brother, the boy I used to help with his math homework, was coordinating hits for Valstone Holdings. He is not just an accomplice, Diane said, her voice grim. He is the project manager. Diane turned back to her computer. She began typing furiously. If he is that deep in, she said, then he is getting paid more than $50,000. That fee from the charity was just a retainer. Where is the real money? She pulled up the file on Evan Holt. My ex-husband, the man who had demanded I apologize to him in exchange for evidence. Evan said the money came from a shell company. I said, he didn't name it, but he said it was obscure. Diane pulled up Evan's financial disclosure forms from our divorce. Then she cross-referenced them with a database of recent wire transfers that she had access to through her investigator contact. Here, she said, a deposit of $10,000 into Evan's checking account yesterday. The sender is Apex Strategic Solutions, LLC. She clicked on the company name. Registered in Delaware. She read, Standard Shell. The registered agent is a lawyer in Panama, but look at the signatory on the bank authorization. She zoomed in on the PDF of the incorporation document. The signature was a scrawl, but the printed name below it was clear. Grant Vale. So Vale is paying Evan, I asked. Wait, Diane said. Look at the power of attorney attached to the account. She clicked to the next page. There, in black and white, was a delegation of authority. Grant Vale had authorized a second party to manage the funds of Apex Strategic Solutions. The name was Tyler Brooks. I stared at the screen. The pieces of the puzzle shifted, locking into a new, terrifying picture. Tyler has signing power on a Valestone shell company. I said. Diane took off her glasses and rubbed her eyes. Do you know what this means? Bella. I nodded slowly. It means Tyler isn't working for my dad. I said, my dad is working for Tyler. Diane nodded. Exactly. Your father thinks he is the patriarch, making the tough calls to save the family, but he is just the host. Tyler is the parasite. Tyler has the direct line to the money. He has the direct line to Vale. He is using your father's charity to wash the money, and your father is letting him because he thinks it is good business. I thought about my father's voice on the phone. Tyler brings solutions. My father was afraid. The chest pains Tyler mentioned in his text, they might be real, but not from stress, from fear. My father was trapped. He had allowed his son to turn the family legacy into a laundromat for blood money, and now Tyler held the keys to the jail cell. If my father tried to stop him, Tyler could expose the charity fraud and send the old man to prison while he disappeared with the offshore accounts. Tyler is the head of the snake, I whispered. I looked at the timeline in my notebook. The bullying, the frame-up, the PR campaign, the threats. It all had Tyler's fingerprints on it. He wasn't the good son protecting the family from the crazy daughter. He was the architect of a criminal enterprise, using his own family as human shields. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was the calm of the executioner. I know what we have to do, I said. Diane looked at me. We subpoena the shell company records. No, I said. That will take weeks. They will shred everything by then. I turned to the window. Outside. The night was black and heavy. I have to go back to Cedar Hollow. I said, Bella. No, Addie said, stepping forward. Your dad said. My dad said not to come back because he cannot protect me. I said, but I am not going there to be protected. I am going there to collect. I turned to Diane. My father has a safe in his study. I said, it is an old floor model. He keeps the official ledgers of the charity there, the ones he shows the IRS, but he also keeps a black ledger, a physical one. He never trusted the cloud with the real numbers. He writes down every bribe, every kickback, every consulting fee he pays out. He calls it his insurance policy. If you can get that black ledger, Diane said, her eyes widening. We don't just win the lawsuit. We send the FBI to Grant Vale's front door, and your brother goes to federal prison for 20 years. I picked up my coat. I'm going to get it. Addie grabbed my arm. I'm coming with you. No, I said. It is too dangerous. I am the witness, Addie said, her voice fierce. And that is my life in that ledger too. If they paid to have me killed, I want to see the receipt. I looked at her. She wasn't the scared girl in the hospital lobby anymore. She was a survivor, and she was right. This was her fight as much as mine. Okay, I said, but you stay in the car until I signal. We left Diane's office at 2 a.m. The drive to Cedar Hollow took 3 hours. We arrived just before dawn, the time of day when the world is gray and silent. I parked the car 2 streets over from my father's house. I did not want to alert Tyler, who was likely sleeping in the guest cottage in the backyard. We walked through the sleeping neighborhood. The houses were dark, the lawns perfectly manicured, unaware of the rot that was festering inside number 44. We reached the edge of my father's property. The house loomed in the darkness, a massive silhouette of colonial respectability. I know the code to the back door. I whispered to Addie. Unless he changed it, he wouldn't. Addie said, arrogant people never think they need to change their codes. We crept through the garden, the frozen grass crunching softly under our boots. I reached the back door. I punched in the code, 1980. The year my parents were married. The lock clicked. Green light. I opened the door. The house breathed out a scent of lemon polish and stale pipe smoke. I signaled for Addie to wait by the door. I moved silently through the kitchen, into the hallway, toward the study. My heart was pounding, but my hands were steady. I was not a daughter coming home. I was a risk assessor coming to audit a failing asset. I pushed open the door to the study. The room was dark, lit only by the faint glow of the street lamp outside the window. I moved to the large painting of a ship on the stormy sea that hung behind the desk. I swung the painting aside. The safe was there. I spun the dial. Right to 10, left to 25, right to 4, my birthday. He had used my birthday as the combination to the safe where he hid his crimes. The irony was almost poetic. The heavy door swung open. I reached inside. There were stacks of cash. There were deeds. And there, at the bottom, was a black leather-bound notebook. I pulled it out. I opened it. Even in the dim light, I could see the columns. Apex Solutions, Wexler Rains, T. Brooks Consulting. It was all there. The anatomy of the betrayal. I closed the book and turned to leave. And then the lights flicked on. I froze. I turned around slowly. Tyler was sitting in my father's leather armchair, hidden in the corner of the room. He was wearing a silk robe, his legs crossed. He held a pistol in his lap, resting casually on his knee. "Hello." "Sis," he said. His voice was smooth, lacking any trace of surprise. He smiled, and it was the smile of the man Addie had heard in the empty apartment, the seal-bark laugh waiting to happen. "You really are predictable," he said. "Dad said you wouldn't come," I told him. "Bella always tries to fix things. It is her tragic flaw." I clutched the ledger to my chest. "It is over." "Tyler," I said. "I have the book." Tyler laughed. He picked up the gun and pointed it at my chest. "You have a book, Bella." "But I have the pen, and history is written by the people who are left standing." He stood up. "Put the book on the desk," he said, "and then get on your knees. We are going to have a family meeting." I looked at the gun. I looked at my brother's eyes, dead and cold. And for the first time, I realized that the greatest risk was never the corporation. It was the bloodline. The only reason we walked out of my father's study alive was because Diane Mercer had timed her play perfectly. Just as Tyler raised the gun, the front lawn was bathed in blue and red flashing lights. The U.S. Marshals had arrived to execute the protective custody order for Addie. Tyler, for all his bravado, was not ready to engage in a shootout with federal agents. He had lowered the weapon, hissed a curse, and retreated into the shadows of the hallway to stash the gun. In the chaos of the police pounding on the front door, Addie and I had slipped out the back, vanishing into the pre-dawn gray. We did not have the ledger. We had barely escaped with our lives. But we had something else a schedule. Tyler had mocked me, but in his arrogance, he had left his digital calendar open on the desk. Tonight was the Brooks Family Foundation Gala. Every year, my father and Tyler spent 4 hours shaking hands at the country club, pretending to be pillars of the community. That meant the house on Elm Street and the safe inside it would be empty. We spent the day in a motel room 2 towns over, watching the clock. Diane brought in a specialist, a private investigator named Miles Grant. He was a man who looked like he slept in his car and lived on coffee. But Diane swore he could track a $1 bill across 3 continents. At 7 in the evening, I drove back to Cedar Hollow. I parked 3 blocks away. I did not break a window. I did not pick a lock. I used the spare key hidden inside the fake rock near the garden hose, a hiding spot my mother had established 20 years ago and my father had never bothered to change. The house was silent. It felt like a museum of a life I had been expelled from. I went straight to the study. I did not take the physical ledger this time. Theft would give them a legal avenue to attack me. Instead, I took out my phone. I opened the safe. I turned the pages of the black notebook. I photographed everything, every page, every column, every scribbled note in my father's distinct, jagged handwriting. I found the entry Diane had suspected, a transfer of $250,000 labeled Risk Mitigation Consulting. I followed the trail in the supporting documents kept in a folder beneath the ledger. The money left the charity account. It went to a company called Blue Horizon Logistics. From there, it went to Apex Solutions. And finally, it landed in an account controlled by Valstone Holdings, tagged with a memo code, Witness and Crisis Management Protocol. They were not just paying Tyler, they were paying a network. I photographed the emails printed out and stapled to the receipts. One was from a generic address. Directed to my father, the leak is plugged. The sister is neutralized. Proceed with the fundraising. I felt a cold nausea in my gut. I was the leak. I was the line item. I locked the safe. I put the key back in the rock. I left the house exactly as I found it. We met Diane and Miles at a 24-hour diner near the highway. I handed over the phone. Miles plugged it into his laptop. He worked in silence for 10 minutes, his eyes darting across lines of code and bank routing numbers. Then he stopped. He looked at me, and his expression was one of genuine disturbance. "You think Valstone is the big bad wolf here?" Miles said, his voice raspy. "You are wrong." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Grant Vale is the CEO. Grant Vale is a client," Miles corrected. He turned the screen around. "I traced the metadata on these transfers. Valstone isn't directing the flow. They are paying for a service, this network Apex, Blue Horizon. They are not shell companies for Valstone. They are an independent firm, a shadow firm. They specialize in corporate cleanup." He pointed to a name that appeared repeatedly in the authorization logs of the shadow firm. T. Brooks. "Tyler isn't just a contractor," Miles said. "He is a partner. He is climbing the ladder. He finds companies with dirty secrets like Valstone. He creates a crisis, or exacerbates one, and then he sells them the solution. He used you to prove he could handle a high-stakes cleanup. You were his audition tape." I sat back in the booth. The plastic seat felt sticky against my back. "He created the problem," I whispered. "He made sure the data leak happened so he could be the one to fix it. He turned his own family into a demo reel." Addie, who had been silent, reached into her pocket. She pulled out a small, battered USB drive. "I have the rest," she said softly. We all looked at her. "I did not just take pictures of the file names," she said before I ran. "I downloaded the source file. It is encrypted, but I remember the password. It is the date my mom died." She slid the drive to Miles. "It has the names," she said, "the people they killed for the insurance, and it has the emails from the risk consultants telling them how to make it look like accidents." Miles cracked his knuckles. "If this is what you say it is, we are not looking at a lawsuit. We are looking at a RICO case." Diane looked at me. Her eyes were hard, shining with the thrill of the hunt. "We do not go to the press," she said. "The press can be bought. We go to the Department of Justice. We file a whistleblower complaint with credible evidence of capital crimes. We bypass the local police. We go federal. Do it," I said. The next 48 hours were a blur of legal drafting. We sat in a conference room at the federal building, handing over gigabytes of data to agents who looked increasingly horrified. I saw my father's handwriting projected onto a screen. I saw my brother's digital signature linked to murder conspiracies. We secured a safe house for Addie. It was a nondescript apartment complex monitored by federal agents. It wasn't a prison, but it wasn't freedom either. Diane filed the papers at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. By noon, the freeze orders went out. My phone rang at 1 o'clock. It was Tyler. I answered. I put it on speaker. Diane signaled for me to keep talking. The agents were tracing it. though we knew where he was. "Hello." "Tyler," I said. His voice was different. The arrogance was gone. The smooth corporate veneer had cracked, revealing the raw, jagged panic underneath. "You stupid witch," he spat. "Do you have any idea what you have done? I audited the books." "Tyler, I found the discrepancy. You froze the accounts," he shouted. "My accounts. Dad's accounts. You just destroyed the family. Dad is in the hospital. For real this time." "The feds are at the house." "Good," I said. "You want a war?" he asked, his voice dropping to a low, menacing growl. "Is that what you want? Because I can make things very ugly for you. I know things about you. Bella, I can spin this." "No, you cannot," I said, my voice steady and cold. "You are not the narrator anymore. Tyler, you are the defendant. You think you are winning," he laughed, but it sounded hysterical. "You are just a disgruntled employee. I am a necessity. People like me run the world. People like you eat the world." I said, "And I am the indigestion. I did not declare war." "Tyler," I continued, "you declared war when you sold me for a contract. I am just finishing it." I hung up. The silence in the room was heavy. "We have him," Diane said. "The wiretap caught the threat. That is witness intimidation on top of the fraud." We went back to the safe house. I felt a strange emptiness. I had expected victory to feel like fireworks. Instead, it felt like exhaustion. I had taken down the monster, but the monster was my brother. Addie was quiet that night. She sat by the window, watching the unmarked cars parked on the street below. "It is almost over." I told her, "The hearing is tomorrow. You give your testimony, and then you are free. You can go to college. You can disappear. You can do whatever you want." She looked at me. Her eyes were old, too old for 18. "They will never stop. Bella, even in prison. They have reach. We have the marshals." I said, "We are safe." She nodded, but she did not smile. I went to sleep in the guest room. For the first time in weeks, I slept deeply, the kind of sleep that comes when the adrenaline finally runs dry. I woke up to the sound of silence. The apartment was too quiet. "Addie," I called out. No answer. I walked into the living room. The front door was unlocked. The agents outside were still there, drinking coffee in their car. They hadn't seen her leave. She must have gone out the back fire escape, slipping through the blind spot she had undoubtedly identified days ago. There was a piece of paper on the kitchen counter. I picked it up. "Bella, you fought for me when no one else would. You saved me. But I know how these people work. If I stand on that stand, they will tear you apart to get to me. They will dig up every mistake you ever made. They will ruin you. They know where I am. I saw the signal last night, a car with one headlight, blinking 3 times. It is a code. I am not going to let them drag you down with me. You have the ledger. You have the emails. You do not need me to win. You are strong enough. Do not look for me. Addie." I stood there, the paper shaking in my hand. The coffee in the pot was cold. She was gone. On the morning of the most important day of our lives, the witness had vanished. Diane called me 10 minutes later. "Where is she?" Diane asked, her voice tight. "The marshals are ready to transport." "She is gone," I said, my voice cracking. "Bella, without her testimony, the murder charges might not stick. We can get them on fraud. But the blood, we need her to prove the blood." I looked at the empty apartment. I looked at the note. She had left to protect me. She thought she was the liability. She didn't understand. She wasn't the liability. She was the reason. "I am going to the hearing," I said. "Bella, without a witness." I said I'm going. I interrupted. "Tyler thinks he scared her off. He thinks he won. But he forgot one thing. What Diane asked. He forgot that I am not just a risk analyst anymore." I said, "I am a sister who just lost her family twice." I grabbed my coat. "I will see you in court." "Diane, and I'm bringing everything." The federal courthouse in Philadelphia was a gray monolith that looked designed to crush the human spirit. But as I walked up the wide stone steps that morning, I did not feel crushed. I felt heavy. Yes, but it was the heaviness of a shield, not a burden. The media was there. A swarm of cameras and microphones penned behind velvet ropes. A week ago, they had called me a homeless grifter. A week ago, they had used my name as a punchline. Today, they shouted questions I did not answer. I just kept walking, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the concrete. Diane Mercer at my side like a compact, terrifying bodyguard. Inside, courtroom 4 was packed. The air smelled of floor wax and nervous sweat. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table. My hands were folded on the mahogany surface, right next to the black ledger I had stolen from my father's safe. Tyler was already there. He sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that cost more than my car. He looked impeccable. He had shaved, worn a blue tie that screamed trustworthiness, and practiced an expression of sorrowful concern. He did not look like a man facing a RICO investigation. He looked like a brother who was heartbroken to be sued by his mentally ill sister. My father, Arthur Brooks, sat in the first row behind the defense. He looked gray. His skin had a papery quality, and he was slumped in his seat, staring at his hands. He did not look at me. The hearing began with the dry rustle of paper. Judge Holloway, a woman with eyes like flint, called the session to order. This was a preliminary hearing for the civil suit and the federal whistleblower complaint, consolidated due to the overlapping evidence. Diane stood up. She did not pace. She did not shout. She simply plugged her laptop into the courtroom projection system. "Your Honor," Diane said, her voice cutting through the room, "we are here to show that the defendant, Tyler Brooks, along with associates at Valstone Holdings, engaged in a systematic conspiracy to defraud investors, manipulate insurance data, and destroy the reputation of the plaintiff, Bella Brooks, to cover their tracks." She pulled up the first slide. It was the metadata from the file that had gotten me fired. "This is the risk assessment protocol that allegedly leaked from Ms. Brooks's computer," Diane explained. "As you can see, the final modification was made by user T. Brooks." Tyler's lawyer stood up. "Objection. Circumstantial. Anyone could have spoofed that username." Diane smiled. It was a cold, sharp expression. "We anticipated that argument. That is why we traced the IP address of the login. It did not come from a coffee shop. It did not come from a hacker's basement. It originated from a static IP registered to the Brooks Family Charity Fund, specifically, a residential terminal located at 44 Elm Street, the home of Arthur Brooks." A murmur rippled through the gallery. My father shifted in his seat, gripping the back of the bench in front of him. Diane clicked the remote. The screen changed to a flow chart of bank transfers, and 2 days after this file was planted, Diane continued, "The Brooks Family Charity Fund paid a consulting fee of $50,000 to T. Brooks Consulting. That money was then moved to an offshore account. We have the ledger." She pointed to the black notebook on the table. Tyler did not flinch. He leaned over and whispered something to his lawyer. Then, he took the stand. His testimony was a masterclass in gaslighting. He spoke softly, looking directly at the judge with wide, earnest eyes. "I loved my sister," Tyler said. "I still do. But Bella has been spiraling since the divorce. She became paranoid. She started inventing conspiracies. I planted nothing. I tried to protect her. The money from the charity was for legitimate IT work I did for Dad." He paused, looking over at me with pity. "The truth is, Your Honor, Bella found this girl Addison on the street. She saw an opportunity. She coached her. She used a vulnerable, runaway teenager to fabricate a story about Valstone because she wanted a settlement. She wanted to hurt our father for cutting her off. It is a tragedy. Really." The courtroom was silent. I could feel the eyes of the reporters burning into the back of my neck. He was good. He was so good that for a second, even I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I crazy? Was I the villain? Then Tyler delivered his final blow. "And as for this witness, Addison Lane," he said, shaking his head, "she has disappeared. Bella claims she is in danger, but the truth is likely much simpler. The girl probably realized she was being used and ran away. There is no witness, Your Honor. Because there is no crime. The judge looked at Diane. Ms. Mercer, do you have the witness? Diane looked at her watch. Then she looked at the heavy double doors at the back of the courtroom. The doors did not open. My heart stopped. Had something gone wrong? Had the marshals been intercepted? Tyler was smirking now, a tiny, triumphant curl of his lip that only I could see. And then, the handle turned. The doors swung open. 2 federal marshals in tactical gear stepped in. Between them walked Addison Lane. She was not wearing her dirty denim jacket. She was wearing a clean gray blazer and black slacks. Her hair was pulled back. She looked terrified, but she was walking. She walked down the center aisle, the sound of her shoes echoing in the silence. She walked past the press. She walked past my father. She walked past Tyler, who had turned a ghostly shade of white. She stopped at the plaintiff's table and looked at me. She gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. I apologize for the delay, Your Honor. One of the marshals said, we had to take a secure route. The witness is now under federal protection. The courtroom erupted. The judge banged her gavel, demanding order. Addie took the stand. She was sworn in. She sat in the witness box, looking small against the wood paneling, but her voice was clear. Tyler Brooks came to see me 2 weeks before I ran away. Addie said into the microphone, I was being held in an apartment in the city. He told me that if I signed a non-disclosure agreement, he would give me $50,000 and a plane ticket to Europe. And if you refused, Diane asked. Addie looked at Tyler. He told me that I was a liability, she said. He said that liabilities get liquidated. He said he had already handled his own sister, so handling me would be easy. Tyler's lawyer jumped up. Objection hearsay. It is not hearsay, Diane said calmly. We have the encrypted file. She held up the USB drive Addie had given us. Ms. Lane surrendered this drive to the FBI yesterday morning. Diane said, it contains the source code for the insurance scheme. It also contains an email thread between Tyler Brooks and the head of Val Stone's risk department, discussing the quote-unquote disposal of the witness. Tyler slumped in his chair. The smirk was gone. He looked like a trapped animal, but we were not done. I call Evan Holt to the stand. Diane said, my ex-husband walked in. He looked terrible. He was sweating. His tie loosened. He looked like a man who had realized that a PR contract cannot protect you from a perjury charge. He took the stand. He did not look at me. Mr. Holt, Diane asked, did you receive a payment of $10,000 from a company called Apex Strategic Solutions? Evan wiped his forehead. Yes. And who authorized that payment? Evan looked at Tyler. Tyler's eyes were wide, silently pleading with him to keep his mouth shut. But Evan was a survivor, just like me. He saw the ship sinking, and he wasn't going down with the captain. Tyler Brooks, Evan said. He told me he needed me to discredit Bella. He said if I made her look unstable, no one would believe her about the charity fraud. He wrote the script for my interviews. The gallery was buzzing now. The narrative had flipped. I wasn't the crazy ex-wife. I was the target. Diane turned to the judge. Your Honor, we have established motive, means, and opportunity. We have the financial trail. We have the witness. Then, a movement in the front row caught my eye. My father stood up. Arthur Brooks was shaking. He looked at Tyler, then at me. He looked at the judge. I need to speak, he said, his voice raspy. Sit down. Arthur, Tyler hissed. I need to speak, my father shouted, his voice cracking. The judge looked at him. Mr. Brooks, you are not on the stand. I know, my father said. But this is my family. He stepped out into the aisle. He looked at Tyler. I thought, for a brief, foolish second, that he was going to defend him. That he was going to claim it was all his idea, to save his son. I didn't know about the murder. My father stammered. I didn't know they were going to kill the girl. Tyler told me it was just consulting. He told me we were just cleaning up the books. Tyler stared at him, betrayed. You coward. Tyler whispered. My father turned to the judge, his hands shaking. He used my accounts. He told me that if I didn't let him use the charity fund, The whole family would go bankrupt. He said Bella was a threat to our legacy. He told me to cut her off. He made me do it. A collective gasp went through the room. My father had just confessed. He had admitted to knowing about the money laundering. He had admitted to conspiring against me. In his desperate attempt to distance himself from the violence, he had confirmed the financial crime. He didn't save Tyler, and he didn't save himself. He just confirmed that the rot went all the way to the bone. The judge looked at the marshals. "Take them into custody," she said. The marshals moved fast. They pulled Tyler out of his chair. He didn't fight. He looked at me as they cuffed his hands behind his back. His eyes were empty. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just shocked that the equation hadn't worked out. They went for my father next. He was crying. He looked at me, pleading, "Bella, please, I am your father." I looked at him. I looked at the man who had shut the door in my face in the snow. I looked at the man who had called me a bad debt. I stood up. "You were right, Dad," I said quietly, though I knew he couldn't hear me over the chaos. I was done. I was done being your victim. The hearing ended in a frenzy. The judge ordered a full federal investigation into Valstone Holdings. Grant Vale was indicted later that afternoon. I walked out of the courthouse. The reporters were screaming my name now, but the tone had changed. They weren't mocking me. They were celebrating me, the whistleblower, the hero. I walked past them. I didn't stop for interviews. I didn't sign a book deal. I just walked to where Diane was waiting by her car. "We did it," Diane said. She lit a cigarette, her hand shaking slightly. "We did," I said. 3 months later, the snow had melted. I stood in front of a brick building in downtown Philadelphia. It was an old warehouse that had been renovated. The sign above the door read Harborstone Witness and Housing Initiative. It was a nonprofit. Diane had helped me set it up using the settlement money from the wrongful termination suit against Wexler and Raines. We provided safe housing and risk management for whistleblowers and victims of corporate fraud. We gave them what I never had: an address, a lawyer, and a chance to fight back. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Addie. She sent a picture. It was a selfie of her standing in front of a college dorm room, holding a stack of books. She looked healthy. She looked young. She looked like someone who had a future. First day of classes. The text read, "Thank you." I smiled. I put the phone in my pocket. I walked up the steps of the building. I unlocked the front door. I wasn't Bella Brooks, the divorcee. I wasn't Bella Brooks, the victim. I was Bella Brooks, the director of Harborstone. I pushed the door open. Inside, the phones were ringing. People were working. There were clients waiting in the lobby. People who had lost everything. People who had been told they were worthless. I walked in to greet them. My father had told me I wasn't worth a penny. He was right. I wasn't worth a penny. I was worth the whole damn bank. And now, I was the one deciding who got to make a deposit. Thank you so much for listening to this story on Juliet Revenge Stories. I would love to hear from you. Please comment below and tell me where you are listening from. I really want to connect with all of you. If you enjoyed Bella's journey, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and smash the hype button so more people can hear this story of justice.